let's get to the week's biggest news, the official announcement that Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures have made a deal for the sharing of Spider-Man. Spider-Man has joined the MCU.
Dun, dun,
now,
dun.
Sony is still involved. They will, according to the official press release, they will continue to finance, distribute, own, and have final creative control of the Spider-Man films. But Kevin Feige, the boss of Marvel Studios, is now a producer, along with Amy Pascal, who is stepping down as the boss of Sony Pictures and will now produce. So Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach are kind of just exec producers now.
Do you feel like that's in name only? Do you feel like this is truly a Marvel Studios movie and that Sony is actually just going to distribute this?
I don't. I really don't. I mean, Amy Pascal is look, Kevin Feige obviously is going to have, I think, a ton of creative control and should.
I think they want him to.
Yeah,
I think get the ship right.
Yeah.
And then,
I think Sony is excited, and he's not even getting paid for it, like an extra fee for it. And I think he's getting paid plenty.
I think he'll be.
I guess. Well, just on that note, real quick, part one story I think it was Variety had it was that basically Marvel didn't pay anything for Spider-Man. That I guess the agreement is Marvel, when Spidey shows up in whatever movie he'll show up in, most likely Cap Civil War, Marvel makes all that money. And when Spidey shows up in his Sony movies, Sony gets all that money. It sounds like a pretty good deal.
Is there any, I don't mean to cut you off, is there any dispensation for like toys and stuff like that because they're going to cross over?
Marvel still has the
I think they already had. Yeah, they already.
Disney Marvel, I think, has.
But even movie merchandise, like it's say Amazon, Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out with toys.
I believe they were at the Disney store.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was still Marvel.
From what I read, Marvel is retaining the merchandising rights for the character. So yeah.
I mean that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that ultimately that it is a great deal because basically the entire idea is let's get this ship right. Let's do right by this character. And in so doing, we're going to make a better property out of it and everybody's going to win and make more money. Sony's going to make money off his films, his solo films. Yeah. And it's going to be of a great benefit to Marvel to have the character available for their other films.
And it also re-energizes the popularity of Spider. Not that, I mean, to fans he's always popular, but clearly the movies, they had been diminishing returns. People weren't excited. You get to have Iron Man or Cap or whomever show up with Spider-Man, he's back, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think this announcement kind of points to how savvy moviegoers are now because people kind of across the internet, and I follow a lot of geeky people, but I was tracking, lots of opinions on it. People generally know what's going on and know that Marvel didn't have these rights and that's why he wasn't in these movies, and generally are like pretty excited about it. I don't think I've seen such unified excitement for a piece of news.
I guess I always say this, but I would say again that I think that the people that follow sort of these things closely are aware of the licensing. Yeah. But the general audience still is not. But it doesn't matter because the message that will be delivered and people will advocate eventually is like, this new Spider-Man's going to be fresh and interesting. You should check it out. I mean, Kevin Feige, I think, definitely is, you just trust Marvel so much at this point. Yeah. And this is their premier character. They're going to put everything they have into making sure that this works.
They've already pushed. They just announced a couple of months ago their whole Phase 3 slate. Now, with Spider-Man, with his next movie coming out in 2017? I have it right here. They've basically kicked everything from Black Panther on down 6 months. Like it's the new Spider-Man movie that Sony will put out. The rebooted one. Will be taking the, July 28th, 2017. That release date was supposed to be Thor Ragnarok. Right. Now that has been moved to, I believe, November. So it's just already they're shifting everything around to accommodate Spidey.
Kind of shows you that these dates aren't set. They're not solid. It's like. For big stuff, for big changes, they will change it, and I think that will apply to Warner Brothers as well. Like I think you can kind of keep this in the back of your mind and think, you know, if something doesn't perform the way that they want it to when they start rolling out their movies, they are going to be looking at that like later slate and saying like, I wonder if, you know, I wonder if we need a Flash movie at this point. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could happen. And
or if Batman v Superman comes out and Batman's the best thing in it. Suddenly I think you're going to see a solo Batman movie.
Get that Batfleck movie.
Just spinning back to your original question, which was about Amy Pascal, I do think Kevin Feige is the right, and I think Sony agrees ultimately, that is the right person to spearhead this ship. But she's a smart lady, lest we forget. Like she's a savvy person, and I think she will have some input into the development, and it'll be a really, ultimately, because she's on the Sony side, she's going to be having to kind of like steer the ship on the solo film. They've got to be synced, and Sony has the ultimate say on the casting. They did retain that, so that is going to be a key element that I'm sure maybe I segued us that we can get into. But
what about the director? Who has sign off on director?
I would imagine it's going to be both of them agreeing to it. At this point, sure, the legalese of the press release sounds like things are more in Sony's favor. Let's face it, they don't know what the hell to do with him. They're going to listen to Marvel on this one.
They absolutely are.
I mean, I think this was them saving some face, but they struck this deal because they needed to. They needed Marvel more than Marvel needed them. Marvel's doing just fine.
It's digging out from all the hack stuff. You know, Amy Pascal leaving is one thing. You know, fixing Spider-Man is going to be another thing. Fixing, you know, I mean, they're making all these moves to like sort of clarify what is now public. You know, the Ghostbusters thing was announced, you know, like all this stuff is coming out to say, okay, here, you guys all saw the emails, now here are the steps that we're taking to like either deliver or not deliver on these things. And I think they were under a lot of pressure actually, maybe for one of the first times from Japan to say, hey, let's fix this Spider-Man thing, you know? Like it's just kind of been languishing.
It's been spiraling out of control for some time now. I mean, that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration. This isn't, but it's
I mean, from Spider-Man 3 made a lot of money, but nobody likes it.
Nobody liked it.
Including Sam Raimi now.
I mean, in Spider-Man 3, what was that, 2007 that came out? I don't know, it's been a long time. So basically, Spider-Man 3 and then 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies, that's 3 in a row that people, by and large, didn't like or had very mixed responses to. You can't afford that, and you keep seeing those movies make less and less. So, reader email, though, real quick, that speaks to part of this issue. Jason Pakovich writes in, do you guys think, basically,
I'm going to start calling
basically, can just Disney and Marvel fully pry Sony's hands off Spidey's movie rights 100% at some point? Like, just say, make them an offer of $1 billion, $1.5 billion.
They did. What I read was that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but one of the things that I read is that Marvel did offer, I think, almost $1 billion to get him back, and Sony said no.
That character is worth so much more than $1 billion, which is a crazy thing to say, but in this day and age, like, one movie can pay for that, you know, or like it's not really one movie, but like
that's
a couple
part of the
movies
reason why Disney wants $1 billion Spider-Man again. They want that back. I mean, Sony wanted that back because that was part of their disappointment with the 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies is you didn't get your bragging rights. Marvel has all the bragging rights.
I want to catch that and say, like, that's one thing that I read was that they did offer. And so I'm not sure that, obviously I'm not privy to that. I wasn't sitting in the meeting. But I had read that they did offer a tremendous amount of money to get that character back, and Sony was just like, no, but we'll do this other thing. That ultimately I think is the right thing. Eventually, do I think that Marvel will probably eventually get the character back? It's hard to say, because if the ship is steered correctly, and then Sony's making money off of the character, why? But another thing that I read was that Disney was considering that if Sony really is starting to go under, that they buy the studio outright. Everything.
Which, holy man.
Can you imagine? They would have
I actually can. I mean, look, if
Men in Black, they would have Ghostbusters.
But seriously, if Sony corporate in Japan are kind of, I mean, there kind of has been writing on the wall for a long time that they're just not interested in the studio side of it, that it's been its own separate entity until there's this giant omelet-sized egg on their face. You know, maybe they will just let it go, but I don't know. I mean,
it'd be fast if Disney bought Sony, they would have Marvel.
Sony Pictures, they're not going to buy Sony proper.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sony Pictures. If Disney bought Sony Pictures, the studio, they would have Marvel, Star Wars, Men in Black, Ghostbusters, now the Jump Street franchise.
I think at that point you're looking at, seriously though, you would be looking at a monopoly case.
Yeah, I do think
they seriously at that point they have somebody somewhere.
But who's going to sue them? Warner Brothers?
Well,
anybody could, yeah.
Yeah, anybody could bring suit, and you're getting to that point already. Like they have so many properties that, like, I've heard that bandied about more in speculation.
Yeah, this is all speculation.
But honest to God, if that happened, somebody will.
Somebody would. I think somebody would at least forward it, like, hey, they're getting too much.
Well, and then also deals like that have to be like okayed by the SEC and everything.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a lot of red flags there, but. It's not like just buying Lucasfilm or something, or Marvel itself. It's buying, I mean, an entire library of stuff too.
In the games, there's an analog in the games world where THQ went under, or it's not really an analog, but this is a way it could go too. THQ went under, and they basically put all their properties up for auction to the highest bidder. And they said, hey, who wants, the WWE license? Who wants this license? Who wants this game that's already been almost developed? The South Park game went into more development because of that. And so, if Sony is truly, truly that desperate, a scenario like that could occur, I guess. But I don't think they're going to be, and I think Spider-Man is going to save them.
But if they also, though, if they got Sony, they'd get RoboCop.
Yeah. RoboCop.
And you see RoboCop and Iron Man
fighting it out.
I think, don't you think Spidey's going to save them, though? I mean, this is like that movie that's going to bring back.
Okay, here's my question then: is how long does this marriage last? Okay, because if they get Spidey back up and running, does this mean come 2019, come Phase 4? We're right back to where we were?
That's a really interesting question because, again, and I want to emphasize that all of this is speculation. I mean, I'm certainly not privileged to these deals. These are just things that I've read that those were under consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if they were. I do think Spider-Man, if the ship is steered correctly, could be a profitable enough franchise to save Sony. So how long would the marriage last? You have to think that Marvel thought out those contingencies in their deal, A, and that B, that Sony would recognize that if it was really the thing that saved their studio, that it was only to their benefit to keep that relationship.
Yeah, like do they possibly have an in perpetuity kind of clause there?
Yeah.
The way that Sony had with Spider-Man and the way Fox has with X-Men and all those kind of ancillary characters. I wonder if like Marvel, could they basically say we can just keep re-upping this deal whenever we want?
Yeah, I wonder if they did.
Like in the comics, Spidey is going to be in the Avengers. I think we can safely say that.
Yeah.
So you're going to get Spider-Man and Sony, and then the same Spider-Man over in the Avengers. That's really good for everybody. So the marriage is going to last as long as the married people are happy.
And it opens a lot of interesting doors for Sony to negotiate borrowing characters from the MCU for their Spider-Man movies.
Which is already part of sort of the initial release. It said that characters from the MCU are definitely going to be coming into Spider-Man movies, which is really why, Feige's touch is going to be important. And honestly, man, is there a more powerful person in Hollywood right now than Kevin Feige?
And he's so chill.
I went to school with him.
Like, it's so...
I went to college together.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I also went to college. It's not humble bragging. I'm pointing out people who did far better in life than me.
No way, man.
I also went to college not only with him, but also with Susan Downey, Robert Downey's wife.
Oh, wow.
And we watched Chaplin together in class. That's how weird that was.
Oh, that's strange.
That is
is very strange. And now she got babies with him.
Oh, well.
But
made baby cakes.
Anywho, on the Spider-Man front, one question, and natural segue from Downey. Look, for a long time, Marvel's kind of linchpin in terms of their cast was Downey. And, there was obviously some kind of, maybe contentious is too strong a word, but heated negotiations to get him back, and of course they did. And his stars, he's definitely a key part of Avengers 2 and Captain America 3. But, that can't go on forever. That's expensive. Could Spider-Man be the solution to Marvel's Downey dilemma, if you will? Like basically, Downey, the star, is the guy holding together. Could Spider-Man, the character, basically be that Downey kind of replacement.
Right, and I think there's two other points to that have to be factored in. Downey right now doesn't need that money, really. It's not like he will ever need to work another day in his life. So I don't think the expensive part is as much a concern as how long does he really want to do it, and how long can he do it and still look like, you know, Tony Stark, and the way you want him to look in it.
And not only that,
he's a beautiful man, and he's kept himself up very well. But I'm saying, like, it's just a contingency in Hollywood.
Considering how hard he's lived too, he looks amazing. But like, it's
hard,
true.
or did he live really well?
He
looks better now.
He
than
lived
in
enough for
his
all of us.
30s.
He lived enough for all of us.
When he was on drugs, yeah, he looks better now.
He lived enough for all of us collectively, our ages.
Keith Richards looks at him and is like, man, you're still alive?
Yeah. Keith Richards is like, this guy can party like an animal. We are so down a rabbit hole. So I think this is that people forget, I think sometimes, that Downey is, in his own way, a very serious actor. You know, like, he's a really good actor. And he's probably got a lot of creative desires right now. Not that Tony Stark's not probably a really fun character to play, but a lot of desire to just do some other things and spread, you know, stretch out a bit, especially financially. He's certainly covered.
Yeah, if you've seen him in Weird Science, you can just...
then you just know. I mean,
you just know.
Like, Weird Science, you know this guy is like, he's like about Shakespeare.
He's on his way.
He's on his way. Stop it. He's amazing. He's great. He's such a good actor. So he's not going to want to do it forever. And then Marvel can't bank on that any more than Fox can with Hugh Jackman to have that character be the premier character. Spider-Man, I think, sells himself, but in order to really be the star of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, that is going to depend on having the perfect marriage between actor and character.
Funny, you should say that, Roth.
Actor and character.
Funny you should say that, Roth, because reportedly the two actors, yes, we already have frontrunners, according to Variety. It was Logan Lerman, who's been up for the role before. I think he was up for it when...
Like 6 times.
Yeah.
Because we should say Andrew Garfield, he's not coming back. I mean, that's... and they also said in the press release Peter Parker, so it's not Miles Morales.
Lots of speculation, and that was trending on Twitter the night that it all happened. There's lots of speculation about it when, like, in the release, people were like,
in the press release,
Peter
Parker.
Parker.
Say the words Peter Parker.
Yeah,
like,
but again, I mean, you can't expect every single person on Twitter to be looking at that press release.
That's your job on Twitter. Go read things thoroughly.
It's actually our job to disseminate that information.
But you know, but two actors that were up for the role: Logan Lerman, who was up for it back when Garfield got it, and then Dylan O'Brien from Maze Runner and Teen Wolf. And the report is that they're going to put Spidey back into high school. So that in and of itself opens up some questions. You know, I personally would have loved to have seen Joseph Gordon-Levitt play Spidey, but you know, he's in his 30s, and I believe he's in his 30s. And,
but he looks like a spry young lad.
Doesn't he, though?
He does.
He was Robin, after all.
Yeah, well, he wasn't. Okay.
We won't get into that.
We won't go there.
But you know, does this, putting him back in school, is that the right thing? I mean, at heart, I guess Spidey is a kid, you know? His name is Spider-Man, but he was a boy becoming a man and dealing with all the issues and responsibilities.
In the comics, they kept Spider-Man perpetually kind of young, and he is. There's something about the nature of that, the youthful exuberance of him, and the quippy, jokey exuberance of Spider-Man that is very different from Tony Stark. That is kind of a weathered, you know, demon in a bottle, like he's really lived kind of a guy. This is somebody that's fun and youthful and full of energy.
But he could bring the sense of humor that Downey had.
But he could bring that humor in, and I think that just on a practical level, whoever it is that they're signing for 10 years, man. They're signing for probably 10 movies. And so they want somebody young who can sustain that through over the course of that many movies, and they want to be able to have some room to let him grow over the next 10 years and age, and I think that's why they're starting him out so young. And finally, they want to have a reason why the hell he hasn't shown up yet with these other guys. So, because like if he's an adult person that is their age, why hasn't he been part of the Avengers yet? And so this answers, I think, some of those questions. But what we don't want, and we talked about this earlier, is another origin story. I don't think we'll get one. We'll get
I don't
a
think
recap.
so. Yeah, I seriously, I mean, Guardians' origin story was about 3 minutes at the beginning of that movie.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? You know, go up to space. Like that's pretty much how that worked.
Your mom's dead. Go to.
Oh, sorry, spoiler alert.
I want that to work for me like that someday. What's up? Just go up to space.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I love both of those guys for Spider-Man. I know there's a little bit of some people groaning about Logan Lerman in specific.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if you haven't seen it, you should watch.
Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah, exactly. He's great in that, and I think he's very charismatic, and I think he could handle the jokiness. I think he could handle the youthful thing, and I think since Spider-Man's coming in Civil War, and that's a little bit like, it's a little bit more.
Well, I mean, we're assuming.
We're assuming. Let's say
it'd be kind of. Wouldn't it be kind of fun though if he showed up in Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Ant-Man? Wouldn't that make people want to go see that movie if he shows up at a tag somewhere?
How old is his daughter? In Ant-Man, she's a little girl, right?
Yeah, she's like 10 or something.
She's like 8 or yeah.
Maybe maybe they'll do a tag for Avengers or something. You know, I could see that happening now that it's in place. You show him in his life right now.
The deal so they could, you know, get it into one of these.
I gotta say though, I'd be pretty shocked if they did all of this to be able to integrate Spider-Man into the MCU and didn't have him in Civil War.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
but
no,
he's
I
going
think
to have to be,
there.
if he's a kid, he's going to have to be in Civil War in a very different way.
Yeah,
You know
well,
what I mean?
yeah, that's what I was going to get around to.
It is a Captain America, Iron Man movie,
Yeah.
so you put him in there. Whose movie is it?
It's still going to be those guys, and I think he's going to be the symbol of unmasking.
Yeah.
So he's going to be the guy who just discovered his powers, is known in Manhattan, but is not like, he's not necessarily like standing with the Avengers. He's like a kid who's out doing good. And so like to unmask him is basically like, that's a point of contention for the film.
Okay, it's good. Because
pitch session.
You can deal with the whole pitch session. Because you can deal with the whole origin bit of it really quickly that ties in organically to the story of Civil War. So we've already been introduced to his origin, and then he's out by the time it's his Spider-Man movie, and then he's just running around fighting people and stuff. Boom. Done.
Boom.
Handled.
Done.
Thank you, Marvel. Send me my check.
Wow. Don't though.
Don't though, because I'm really.
You can't accept
I think
that.
you got it, Kevin Feige. I get it. You probably got it.
So
I think Feige's maybe he's got control of the situation.
I think he's probably.
Yeah,
got
he
it.
was wringing his hands until you piped
Until I
up. He
got
was
it.
like, oh my God, we talked ourselves into this. What the hell did we do?
I've never heard these theories before.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that. Yeah.
So any final thoughts on Spider-Man and sort of his role going forward in the MCU? I mean, it seems like how much do you think Spidey's going to be involved in all these other movies now?
A lot.
A lot.
I am
So
excited
You know,
to answer your question.
okay.
I am excited. I'm so excited about this.
I'm so excited.
So excited.
But it's also too like it's just so weird to think like all that teasing of Sinister Six and all that, and that's kind
That was
of up
legit,
in the
though.
air. But
I mean,
yeah.
but that was legit. It was like they were developing out a universe.
But it just seems like now it's like
they said not though. They said it's still going to happen, but what? How?
Yeah, in what
Eventually.
context. But now also though, Norman Osborn could become a big part of the MCU because he is in the comics, so that brings in this whole other, maybe another future threat, like the way Thanos has been kind of laced through the MCU thus far. Maybe Norman Osborn becomes the next Thanos type threat that is kind of the key to all these things.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
One other point I wanted to bring up is that a lot of people were talking about whether or not X-Men or Fantastic Four were a possibility now that this deal is done.
In fact, I believe Jason Pakovich also asked that in his email.
And I think at this point in time, they got the one that they really wanted. Like, I think X-Men stands alone in its own world, and I think Marvel is like, it would be nice to have Fantastic Four, but it is not a necessity for us. We have our universe now, and Spidey is kind of like the new guard Avenger that like didn't exist in the old comics. Like the Avengers were totally separate from Spidey, but Spidey and like Wolverine came into the Avengers later on. Now I don't think Wolverine's going to come over either.
No,
they're never gonna get them.
Joshua Yellen and I kind of had this debate the other day at our company meeting. Isn't it nice that we were paying attention instead of talking about Wolverine? But he was like, yeah, definitely now they're going to get Wolverine. And I'm like, you crazy. They're not getting Wolverine. First of all, There's absolutely, Fox doesn't have the motivation to do that.
No, there's no incentive.
There's no incentive for them. The relationship between Fox and Marvel is not good, apparently. They are doing just fine with the X-Men universe. And Jackman is probably going to be done with Wolverine by the time anything like that. I thought
you were going to say he was probably going to be dead.
I was
like, no.
He's not going to be dead. But he'll be done with Wolverine by the time a negotiation like that could even come into play, which I just don't think it will. Like they're already seeding these younger characters for X-Men to take over sort of the Jean Greys and your Cyclops. Like they already have plans for 10, 20 years down the line for this franchise. They have no interest in that.